Hello and welcome to the Brilliant People podcast by executive search firm Acertitude. I'm your host, Linnea Jungnelius. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming Charlie Turano, a powerhouse in the world of sports. As executive director at Heritage Werks, Charlie helps sports teams and organizations preserve, protect, and monetize their legacies, turning history into strategic assets. Before that, he co-founded Genesco Sports Enterprises, shaping it to one of the most respected corporate representation firms in the industry, advising top brands on how to maximize their impact in sports. And it all started with the Dallas Cowboys, where Charlie got his first taste of the business of sports, an experience that sparked a career dedicated to driving innovation, brand growth, and long-term value in the industry. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Linnea. It's great to be here.
You've built a career at the intersection of sports, brand strategy, business growth. And I'm curious, from your early days with the Cowboys to leading major initiatives at Heritage Werks, what's been the common thread that's driven your success?
Well, it's funny. The common thread isn't what you would think it would be. The common thread is really that I've never stayed too long. So after something is identified as an initiative that we want to get accomplished, whether it's at the Cowboys or Genesco Sports Enterprises, once it gets done, I'm ready to go on to something else. I'm just not the kind of person that wants to have a Groundhog Day every single day. And if you work in sports and team sports, that's exactly what happens. One season goes to the next, goes to the next, goes to the next. So for me, I always wanted to be in an environment where there's always something new to accomplish. So yeah, I'm not a 50-year guy at a company.
I agree with that. You have to stay intellectually stimulated, challenged, whether that's where you are today in the same company, but taking on a new challenge, or it's going somewhere else.
Right.
So season after season after season, Heritage Werks redefines the way sports teams think about that history, not as something to store away, but as a powerful business asset. Can you break down what that looks like in practice, and how are teams turning their heritage into real revenue-generating advantage?
Well, first, I just want to make one clarification. Revenue generation year over year is really small potatoes. It's really not about, is Heritage another way to make money like hot dogs or merchandise or ticket sales?
Yeah.
Heritage means too much. Heritage makes a big impact on the franchise value. So the most important thing with any owner, they'll say they want to win the Super Bowl, they want to win the World Series, but those are all strategies or tactics to the goal of having a very involved fan base. And what drives a fan base more than any other thing is the team's heritage. So once you can tap into a team's heritage, you can build that fan base, which, by the way, makes the franchise value go higher and higher and higher. And as you've seen in the news now, every team is going for $5 billion, $6 billion, $7 billion. Like they're keep going up, and the sky's the limit. There's no stopping to how high these teams are going to get. And I think Heritage is going to play a key role in that.
Very much so. Building a brand, it's all about storytelling, but the integrity in the storytelling as well, right?
Yeah. So one thing you can't deny is your history. It confesses exactly the kind of brand you think you are.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you'll hear a company say, we're a brand. Well, actually, you're just a logo. You're a logo with a product and a price and some cool promotions. But you're not really a brand unless you understand what made you who you are and how you got there 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 150 years ago. And when we can go back into a history of a company and look at that brand's actual actions over the last 150 years, it confesses who they are. And you can't hide from it, and it's a great thing to leverage.
Yeah. Maybe before I dive into the next question, give a little bit of insight or color into the types of things that you preserve and the type of history that you archive.
So the types of things that we preserve include audio, film, video, photographs, documents, and objects that represent everything from, say, last night's New York Knicks game all the way back to the founding of the Knicks way back in the 1940s. So they're one of the oldest NBA teams around. So everything, every player, every moment, every milestone, every coach, every location, uniform story from that long history is all part of the evolving history of the New York Knicks now.
Yeah. I haven't been yet, but I'm very excited to go to the warehouse someday because from what you've described in the photos I've seen, it looks just like the Smithsonian Museum.
Well, I would say that it's probably a step above any museum you've ever dreamed about. It's an archival facility that has some of the most treasured items in American history, in American sports, and American corporate history in the world. Just amazing stuff. It's very well protected, preserved. The protocols are amazing. Once you go, you never forget your trip to Heritage Works, and you're invited.
I can't wait. You talked a lot about every person, every brand. We all have our history, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not all of us think about curating that history with a lot of intent and thoughtfulness and care. When you talk to team owners and presidents and you look at a lot of franchises maybe before you guys have come in, what's the biggest missed opportunity when it comes to leveraging history and brand equity and actually taking time to curate it?
Well, first of all, the team presidents, the CEOs of corporations, they're all very smart. So they're not missing opportunities. They're just prioritizing something else now. So it's not like they don't understand history is important. Perhaps there's not a reason to leverage it as much as they would like to. But then all of a sudden, an anniversary comes up or some other big moment or milestone that they're like, oh my gosh, I really need to take advantage of telling a different story, or new leadership comes into a team and they want to ingratiate themselves to the fans and the former players. And they do this by embracing their heritage and saying that it's important. So it's really a point in time. It may be an owner wanting to build or renovate a new stadium. There's always a launch point to why you do something. And then once you get into it, you realize all the other benefits. And these are enterprise benefits for any team or any corporation. It doesn't hit one department. It really is over the entire department. So it takes a while for a team to understand that. But now, fortunately, we work with about a third of pro sports teams, and we have enough people evangelizing our work to each other. So we're highly recommended by anybody any team we talk to. We're like, well, just go talk to our friends at the Steelers or the Cubs or the Cardinals or the Warriors. And when they do, we get glowing reports.
Yeah, you talked a lot about those moments where you can really pull from the archives and tell amazing stories and go back and find facts that maybe people didn't even know about, right, from things that have happened over time. Can you walk us through one of those standout case studies in a time when you and the Heritage Werks team really helped an organization unlock serious value from its history?
Every single team has success stories, but since we're in New York, I'll start with the New York Mets. Mike Piazza, their Hall of Fame baseball player, is a good friend of Heritage Werks and a good friend of ours. He introduced us to the Wilpon family, who owned the Mets at the time, convinced them that from a responsibility standpoint, you really should take care of these things. And the Wilpons did that. And then a couple years later, they were bought by the Cohen family. So Steve Cohen buys the team, and he's like, I've always been a history buff. I love the history of the Mets. Let's dig into this and leverage a little bit more. So what he did was take a real appreciation for the team's history. He erected a statue for Tom Seaver out at the stadium that some say was long overdue. He brought back the old timers game, which got himself really ingratiated with a bunch of former players, and the fans absolutely loved it. He used his heritage to launch a virtual vault. That's sort of an online museum to share with fans around the world. He uses the heritage for many, many reasons, whether he's renovating the new stadium or whatever. He has made heritage sort of part of the daily business flow of the New York Mets. And even their own employees will tell you, I've worked here for 25 years, and I didn't know this happened or that happened, because all you know is what you've been told. And the archives confess things that you have not been told. So they're all finding out new things and what it's like to be a Met. It's really a wonderful thing to show a team.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. I love that. What about, is there another team or organization where you have a similar?
Sure. So we got a call from Mr. Illich, who owns Little Caesars, the Detroit Red Wings, and the Detroit Tigers. He's like, we're building a brand new arena. I want to make sure that we pay homage to our Detroit Red Wing former players. So can you get all of our archives in a format where we can now display them? So we worked with a really brilliant curator, Marcel Parent, and his team at Illich Holdings. And when they built a Little Caesars Arena, it was recognized as Facility of the Year. I think this was 2018 or 19. And it's just beautiful. It's dripping with heritage. When fans show up, they feel like they're not only going to a game, but they're also going to step back in history. And the former players love it. So that was a great moment. So when teams are thinking about building stadiums and arenas or renovating, we often get calls because whether you're the Texas Rangers or the Golden State Warriors, when you're building something new, you want the fans to come there and feel like home. And when they're surrounded by their heroes and those great moments, it's a great promise to like, this is what you could be seeing on your next trip to the stadium or the arena. And you've got a front row seat, not only to the game, but a front row seat to history.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to sort of go back in time a little bit too. I'm curious about where this idea came from even to begin with. And what were teams doing before you were there to share this solution with them?
Well, let me tell you, the founder of Heritage Werks, Keir Walton, who you have met, is a brilliant, brilliant marketer. He came from the world of WPP. He understood, insights on brands. And what he determined was that the brand is only as strong as its heritage, and that's what differentiates one brand from another. So he went deep, deep, deep into how to do the workflows and the processes to go and get a collection and make sure that you could curate it, make it accessible back to the team to be used on a daily basis. And he's done a wonderful job. He had the vision 15 years ago, and then he was smart enough to surround himself by some brilliant people, brilliant archivists and platform people and content communications people, all of our client services people. They're just fantastic. So it's a fully integrated, easy solution that was not available 15 years ago. And really, for the past 10 years, I'd say the technology didn't even exist for it. And now with AI, which we're leaning heavily into, we're even better equipped to handle the demands for content.
Every business is thinking about artificial intelligence. It's such an exciting moment, I think, for not only sports, but business in general. And
life.
Yeah, right?
I think so.
I mean, the sports industry, AI and, non-AI is evolving at just such an insane pace right now, from AI-driven fan experiences to global expansion of leagues. And what trends are you seeing in the industry?
There are three things: goals, strategies, and tactics. I think the goals are not changing. The goal has always been, will always be, franchise valuation and increasing the value of a franchise. Now, the different strategies and tactics that teams may go after creates all the insanity. It's like, it's fan experience, it's, ticket driven, it's mobile devices, it's at the end of the day, you have to prioritize what are the key drivers in the value of the franchise. Everything else is kind of and could be a distraction. I think there are a lot of things going on in sports. I think it's great. I think they're evolutionary. I think they're temporary. Even like gambling on sports games, I don't know that that's a long-term thing. I think it's really hot right now, but I think there are a lot of pitfalls to it that at some point in time may be reeled in. Of course, paying college athletes, it's a great idea. It's kind of wicky-wacky a little bit right now with NIL, so I think we get reeled in. Even, some sports that get really, really hot and then kind of cool. It's like, is pickleball here forever? I don't know. I don't know. So I think it's neat. I think it's great for people to try these things, but I don't think they're sustainable in the long term. I think big leagues, big teams, big franchise values drive everything, and everything else is just sort of chasing it a little bit.
Exactly, to your point, there's so much happening. It's almost, you just have to think about how your organization, your team fits into all of that. And I think it's really about prioritizing.
It is. Priority is the secret to success.
Yeah.
It's the main things that drive the main things, and all the little stuff is distraction. You can really get distracted in sports because there's so many things to concentrate on. And if you give them all equal weight, you're doing a disservice to the things that really matter. Win the game, drive your fans, with a good experience, but give your fans content that they want to see and that motivate and inspire the fans and make them your fans forever. You want to have a fan that hands that fandom off to the next generation. That's the kind of content you need to be giving your fans, not there's so much silly content, and it's cute, and it's entertaining.
Yeah.
But it's not really going to drive the franchise value. It's just taking up space.
Yeah.
So you might as well tell them the stories of the greatest players, the greatest moments and milestones, the things that have motivated, made, the Detroit Lions, or the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Pittsburgh Steelers. There are things that define those teams that those fans hold in their heart, and it means more to them than a better hot dog. It just does. I've nothing against hot dogs. I love hot dogs. But it's not why I go to the game. I go to the game to be inspired, motivated, entertained, and to where I can't wait to go to the next game or see the next game on TV. I think they've done a great job on TV, and they're doing a better job in the stadium. But, boy, the TV product is fantastic. Yeah.
So if I'm a CEO or maybe a CMO of whether it's a major sports team or an emerging league or sports tech company, how should I be thinking about my content today? And again, pulling out the stories that fans care about.
Well, I mean, you know the moments that make fans cheer. You can hear it in the stadium. Those are the things you don't forget. So I would say collect as much as you can. If you could go back to the 1950s and there's great games going on and you could go back and watch, Jackie Robinson's first game or something like that, what would you collect from that game to tell the story of it today? You would collect everything. So as you move forward, what a lot of teams don't realize is that they're making history right now. And it could be the golden age of their team happening right now, but they don't realize it at the time. I'll tell you what, I'm really proud of one of our clients in the National Hockey League, and that's the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers have been around for 30 years. They have been not super successful for many years, and even over the last 10 years when Vinny Viola bought the team, they put in a really strong front office, prioritized winning, and did some great things, and now they're on the verge of being a team that could go to the Stanley Cup Finals for the third consecutive year. And last night in New York, they were named the 2025 Sports Business Journal Team of the Year, which is quite an accomplishment when you think about hockey and Florida. Like those two things don't really sound right?
Exactly.
But they've done an amazing job, and they've done a great job of capturing their history from this moment on and even going back and finding it, because one day it's going to be one of the great sports stories to tell, how hockey really flourished in a state like Florida where there's no ice and no snow or any of that. So it's wonderful to see new ownerships embracing their heritage and realizing at the moment we're in the middle of something great and we need to capture it all right now. And I think they're doing a great job.
That's amazing. And look, as someone who grew up in Sweden, where hockey is, very much part of the culture, it's so interesting to see teams all over the place and places like Florida flourish.
It's a great sport. You know, at the end of the day, is it a great sport to watch? It needs to be great to watch live. Then it needs to be great to watch on TV. And then certainly through TV, you can feed a lot of content that, again, feeds the live attendance. But if it's a great sport, it's a great sport. The major sports are major sports for a reason. And it's because they're so entertaining, they're so wonderful, and there's so much memory when a fan watches a game, they can remember, whether it's a series, the Cowboys versus the Eagles or whatever, you can remember that for years, that it's not happening just now. It's part of a story that began many years ago that just continues. And when fans can relate to that, they feel closer to the sport, and that's what drives the value.
I think you're absolutely right. And I actually recently had Eric Anderson, who grew Topgolf for a long time. He's still the vice chair there. And now he has a company called West River Group that he founded that's an investment firm in a lot of these areas as well. And one of the comments he made was really about positioning and your brand identity. And, it's about play and human connection. And I think you're echoing that same point about the human experience.
For me, my memories are my treasured assets. So whether it's memories with my family or memories traveling, but especially my memories with my teams. Like, I'm just going to be a Dallas Cowboy fan forever. Yeah. I grew up a Cowboy fan. I went to games with my dad. The players, I love them. I can't see a number 33 on the Cowboys, even if another player's wearing it, without thinking of Tony Dorsett.
Yeah.
So I treasure my own memories, and I think it's a noble cause. What we're doing, we're giving credit to those that came before us, and we're honoring those players. It's never going to go out of style. And by the way, the new generation, it's a great generation, but they love hearing stories. Anyone you talk to in the younger generations, if you want to get their attention, just say, let me tell you a story about this. They'll stop what they're doing and they'll listen. That's kind of our magic, is that we can bring those stories forward.
Yeah. I think the aspect of preserving memories and proactively thinking about how you can create more memories is so powerful. And I think unless you have attentiveness around it, you don't know exactly which stories to tell and how to evolve your brand with a lot of thought about who you are today, but more importantly, who you want to become.
And who you are on the court or on the field is one thing, but who you are in the community is just as important.
Right.
Companies and teams do great community work. So they need to record that and remind people that we may not win every game. Because the last I checked, half the teams lose every game, right? So if half the teams lose every game, you can't really have a strategy where we're just going to win and be great and put it all on winning. Winning is awesome, but in those years or those stretches, the ball may not be bouncing your way and you're not winning as much. You can always remind people of when you did win, what you do in the community, and that it's more than just one game. Your relationship with your team should be deep and lifelong, and your heritage is how you really reinforce the fact that it's not about last night's game. It's about what we're going to be with each other for the next 20 years.
That's really insightful. Using heritage as the enduring brand equity, especially when things are not going well.
Right.
Like, that's a really key moment for a lot of teams. I didn't think about that perspective.
Again, you can't always have a short sight. You need to have a long vision forward and an equally long vision backward.
Exactly.
It gives you a lot of perspective, like, hey, things are going to be fine. They've been fine before. They're going to be fine again. Again, somebody's going to win, but somebody's going to lose. That's just life.
Are there other moments like that? We've talked about anniversaries, new stadium and facility openings, maybe when you're losing, obviously the great moments of achievement. But what are some of the other touch points where brands should really think about storytelling that might be even more impactful?
Well, a lot of time when they innovate, they don't really innovate as much as they do is they bring back an old idea. So sometimes they'll launch a new initiative, but it'll make sense because, for example, if the Florida Panthers were going to do something around women's empowerment, well, it's interesting to note that the Florida Panthers were the first team to have a Zamboni operator that was a woman. So it's like sometimes the old facts give you ideas to lean into a new initiative, and they can do that with authenticity because they've been there before and they've walked in those shoes and they've made those decisions. So many times your heritage will lead you forward. All you need is permission and an idea. You want to be authentic about it. So a lot of great teams are leaning in their heritage so that they can learn what made them special and kind of do it again.
And it starts with capturing it all. And what I think is so interesting now with artificial intelligence is you can search and filter and access everything that you're capturing to such a greater extent with so much greater precision. And
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned AI, because what happens now with AI, at least the searches that I do, there's a lot of hallucination. So you'll get some of it, but it's not really real or even not factual. So one of the initiatives that we're working on with Georgia Tech right now, one of the leaders in machine learning and artificial intelligence, is how to search factual data. So they'll point their engines towards our archives so that when you do pull it, it's actually factual and it's correct and it's accurate and it doesn't have these hallucinations in it. So I think AI is going to make content just beautiful. And now that AI is also sort of developing a feeling, you can say, I'd like a story with more inspiration or more motivation or more empathy, and you're going to get really beautiful stories being told. But I think the best part about it is you'll have to rely on your archives to pull factual data. That's why for us, every team owner, every team president we talk to, we're like, please, please get this in shape now, because it's not something you can do overnight. We engage with a team. It's a painstaking process. It may take 18 months to pull together and clean up someone's archive for the past 50 or 80 or 100 years. So I think the technology is going to get here. Some of our teams are going to be using it, and the other teams are going to say, we want to do that too, but they're not going to be prepared yet.
yeah, you have to put that foundation in place.
You have to.
And the things we know that we can do today with this new technology is one thing, but look, 3 years from now, 5 years from now.
3 weeks from now. It's going to change. It changes literally every day.
Yeah, exactly. So what's next for you and for Heritage Werks?
Well, for Heritage Werks, AI is big for us, of course. We're just going deeper and deeper with the teams we have. We've done a great job leveraging what corporations do, bringing it to the major sports, and now we're really getting into college sports. So we feel like college is super important because they're challenged for revenue. They need connection to their alumni. When you're at Florida State, which is our first school to sign on, now they can have conversations with their alumni about development and giving back to the university, but they can have personal messages. Here's a photo of you on the 1963 swim team. You're coming up for an anniversary. We'd like to put together an event, yada, yada. So that's what we really like. I think college is going to be it. But it took some really forward-thinking collegiate executives to do this. And fortunately, we have the athletic director, Michael Alford, who is just a brilliant athletic director. He came from pro sports, and just an understanding that these college institutions and these universities are going to be behaving a lot more like pro sports than they used to, like college sports, with all the rule changes. To have a gentleman like that leading Florida State's a big deal for Florida State, and he was quick to call us and say, we need your help here. So soon, I would imagine, we'll be having many, many universities and college athletic programs.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing to dive into, too, the trend around the college space right now. When you think about what's happening with the NIL and brand being the teams themselves, and then brands in terms of the association with certain players. And if you're going to be seeing more player movements across teams that you haven't before, being people would spend all 4 years somewhere and you really build a unit and a team that stays together, how do you think about brands changing or curating brands in a different way with that dynamic?
Yeah, I don't think it's that big a deal.
Yeah.
Because the players only come for 4 years anyway if they stay.
Yeah.
So it's not a long time. And free agency has happened in pro sports now for a pretty good time. And usually player movement creates interest. If a great player goes from one pro team to another pro team, all of a sudden that fan base gets excited. Well, I think the same thing's going to happen in college. Once they get it figured out really well, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Hey, the pro teams have been very, very successful with free agency. I think the colleges will be very, very successful with free agency too. It might actually be, in the long term, better than what we're used to, believe it or not. I think it'll be great.
Mm.
And the team is still the team.
Yeah.
So Florida State's still Florida State, and they're still going to go after those types of players, as will Alabama and Michigan and all the big schools. They're still going to do that. You're not going to wake up one day and, have the Duke basketball team look a lot different. They know how their brand is. They always look for players that fit that, whether that's an incoming freshman or a transfer, they're going to do that. And then when those players step into those uniforms, it's important for those colleges to remind those players there were players that came before you that built this brand, and now you have to step in and be that standard. So for us, it's a great opportunity because it's another point of reinforcement.
One of the other things I always love to ask about is leadership, being that as an organization, we put a lot of those leaders in place, and we think a lot about how you create complementary teams of people. And I'm curious, Charlie, as you think about all the partnerships you have with leaders in these organizations and their leadership styles, how do you use Heritage to position leaders for success when they're either coming into an organization or they're trying to refresh the positioning of that organization with the purpose of really inspiring a team to greatness?
Whether you're a CEO, a president, an owner coming into a new position, we've had many presidents request, can I have the CEO speeches and the annual reports and things like that from years past so that I know, am I still on the same path? Am I taking a different path for a reason? But they'll often look back at previous work. What were the big accomplishments done 25 years ago, 10 years ago? What do I want to set forward for the accomplishments I want to make sure that we accomplish in the next 5, 10, 25 years? So a lot of it is looking back. In a way, it's sort of, am I going to step up and be as good a president, as good a leader, as good an owner, or better than who came before me, with very specific examples of what that scorecard might look like. And let me tell you, the leaders of today are brilliant. They're educated, they're smart, they're savvy, they're sensitive, they're wonderful, wonderful leaders. The CEOs that we cross paths with, we learn more from everyone. And I will say, one in particular happens to be also a very good personal friend is Joe DePinto at 7-Eleven. Their CEO is outrageously beloved by the rank and file. He believes in servant leadership. He manages beautifully. He's got a vision for the future. He lives the right kind of life personally himself. So when you see leaders like that, it inspires us, our staff, to be like those that we get to run into. One of the best things about Heritage Werks is the people we work with, but also the people we get to meet along the way. And they're inspirations every day.
I love that. I was going to actually ask you who the leaders are that are inspiring you lately. Is there anybody else?
Oh, there are so many. Even within our own company, we have leaders in every single department that are brilliant at what they do. They make us sleep so well at night because we know they care about it more and know about it more than we could ever know about. So we have some brilliant leaders within Heritage Werks, and then outside of Heritage Werks, I would say everybody we deal with is brilliant in their own way. They're very different, but they're awesome. They're really, really wonderful leaders. So what I've found is there's 3 traits to leadership that matter most. And we've talked about this. So the first is chemistry. Those that realize chemistry is important, that you have to get along, that you have to like each other if you're going to be successful, that you embrace a shared vision, the value of a shared vision, that everybody's marching the same way. And then to be appreciated and to appreciate is very, very important. So for us, in every partnership we get involved with, whether it's a client or a vendor or whatever it may be, we look for chemistry, shared value, and appreciation. And if those 3 things genuinely exist, we can't lose. If one of those is missing, eventually it will fail.
That's a great leadership philosophy and framework. One of the things I know about you is, one, you're probably one of the most thoughtful, inclusive, energized, and inspiring people I know. And I'm curious, as you think about your own leadership philosophy, you've been part of many successful organizations and grown teams, and you're part of an amazing one today. How do you think about that for yourself?
Well, I think leadership for me is really humility. If you can stay humble, then you can realize you still have a lot to learn. And if you're learning, those around you see that you're learning, and that's a big deal. If you're humble, you're fun and easy to hang out with, which is really important, because everybody that you work with, you spend more time with them than anybody else. So if you can learn to be humble and stay humble, and it's genuinely who you are, that's important. The second philosophy in leadership, or really just personally for me, is if you believe that every favor you do gets paid back 10 times, how many favors would you do? You do a lot. So as a company and individually and in our leaderships, we do favors for people with no expectations sometimes. And you know what? They come back and they pay you back. Who knows what it would be? So if you can help somebody out, if you can encourage them along the way, if you can be there and be an ear to listen to, just do it. It's no big deal. It doesn't take that long. And you know what? At the end of the day, that's where you get your history and heritage of your own reputation. You're like, well, they're a thoughtful company. So I think we all kind of embrace that as well.
It's true. The giver gets it all.
Gets it all.
It's the secret. Charlie, as you think about your own performance and operating at your best, pivoting gears a little bit, what are the things you do, the routines you have, the habits you curate to really show up as your own best self and the own best leader of yourself every single day?
So the only habit or routine that I have that I really enjoy, really look forward to every single day is an early morning call with Keir Walton, our founder. So we talk every single day. We set the priorities for the day. We make sure we're aligned. We talk about the things that are most important, because if you win the day, you win the week. You win the week, you win the year, So that is my routine. It's communication, and it's communication with someone who I love doing business with, and personally, we're best friends, so it's fun for me. We have a great time. We really enjoy our time together in business and then outside of businesses too. So every morning, my routine is talk to the person who's going to move the business the most, and Keir and I talk every single day.
That's amazing. Communications cadence, that's really important. I was actually at an event recently. A group of folks had done a study on building trust. It was really fascinating because one of the stats that had come out of their research was that when it comes to building trust, the regularity and the cadence of communication was actually more important than what was being communicated.
Yes. You got to hear the person's voice. You got to know they're human. You got to know they're real. You have to understand that there's a life beyond business where things come up, and you got to be there for your coworkers. You have to understand that. We get together regularly, at Heritage Werks on a lot of different levels, and it's wonderful because you take so much away from it, and doing it in person is important.
Yeah.
And the less you rely on emails and texts and just pick up the phone and hear someone's voice makes a difference.
Yeah, it's about showing up, right? And I think about that in terms of what you do too, like the stories that you tell, you help to shape that regularity, that cadence, that consistent voice in the market. We've talked a lot about what stories you tell, but it's also how you distribute it and how you share it.
And the fortunate thing for us is that social media is such a great tool.
Yes.
We work with the Los Angeles Kings hockey team, and they're like, we would like to get more engaging with our social media. So we took a lot of their objects and we used our 3D photography, and you can spin around these hockey skates and helmets and sticks and pucks. And so you can actually post them and have the fans interact with them a little bit better. So you have to talk to people in the channel that they're listening to. And if they're listening to social media and they're in social media, talk in there. If it's game day, talk that way. If you're aware, and again, you have your heritage and shape, you can deploy that in many different mediums and many different ways to talk to the people who are most important to you. But the cadence is super important, and you just need to keep washing people like an Easter egg. You tell them one time, they don't come out purple, but you tell them 10 or 20 times, they're going to be bright purple for you.
Yeah. I love that. When you think about what's inspiring you beyond leaders, when you think about, the content that you consume, are there channels, podcasts, books, online journals, or people that you pay attention to personally?
Yeah, there's so many. I tell you, I'm an Italian American, proud Italian American. So I listen to the Italian American podcast that John Viola does. It's a step into my ancestral heritage, but it hits, music, fashion, food, everything that rounds out my life. I do that a lot. There are a lot of business leaders out there who are wonderful. There's a lot of inspirational people. There are former athletes and good friends who I get inspiration from every single day. And then the content of our work is very inspiring. I mean, I hear stuff about some of our clients every day. I'm like, I had no idea that this happened or that happened for the Mets or the Dodgers or the Steelers. And I'm like, wow, had no idea that that's how he started the team. That's really interesting. And the philosophies behind it, the grit and determination that it takes to succeed. Nobody's an overnight success. And people go through hard times to get where they are. And when you can understand that story, you can relate it to your own life. And you're like, well, if Mike Piazza had to go through all this as the 61st round draft pick to make it to the Hall of Fame, I can overcome a few things in my life to do the things I'm trying to do. It's relatively easy compared to the hardships other people overcome.
That's a really good point as well. Charlie, we are nearing the end of the show, and I always love to wrap up with a rapid fire round.
Okay, let's do it.
So, you ready?
Sure, I think.
Purpose is
something I didn't realize till I got to Heritage Werks. My purpose is to honor those that came before me. That's it, on a professional level. On a personal level, my purpose is to be the best dad I can be to my son because I had a great dad. And I take that very seriously, and nothing gets in the way of that.
Leadership is
humility. Leadership is quiet. Leadership is not boastful. Leadership is example, and it's giving credit to others.
I love that. Leadership is example. Success
is something that dies every day. But fortunately, when you wake up the next morning, it's waiting there for you to go get again.
I've never heard that one before.
I just made it up.
Brilliant leaders are
everywhere. You just have to find where their brilliance is. They're everywhere. They're under every rock that you will ever find. Humans are brilliant leaders. You just got to pick and choose.
I perform at my best when I'm surrounded by people I love. Charlie, that was such an inspiring conversation. Thank you so much for joining me here in the studio in New York City, and look forward to having you again sometime.
Thank you for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you to Charlie Turano of Heritage Werks for joining us today. I hope all of you walk away inspired to curate your history, to tell the stories at the moments that matter, and to look within your organizations for where to build your brands next. And thanks to you, our listeners, for tuning in. That's it for this episode of the Brilliant People Podcast. I'm Linnea Jungnelius. If you found this conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show, and follow Acertitude and Heritage Werks on LinkedIn for the latest insights on how to lead and perform at your best. Until next time, stay brilliant at work.